Do you remember being a kid and getting this ice cream cone and just feeling so much joy and happiness? And it's like, oh wow, this is totally amazing. Until someone ruins it and says, oh, that's really bad for you. And then, like, all joy and happiness goes out the window, and you start having that mentality of, like, when I eat ice cream, this is bad for me and I shouldn't do it. And on the flip side of that, I remember being a kid and having an orange and then wanting a second orange. And my grandma was visiting at the time, and my mom was going to give me the second orange, but then my grandma was like, you shouldn't have two oranges because too much is bad for you. And it was like that mentality was also in my brain. So, like, too much fruits was bad, eating ice cream was bad. It was like, where is this happy middle ground? What kind of thoughts do you have ingrained in your brain from being little, if any? I asked a bunch of you if you've had that, like, what was your idea of bad and good foods? And of course, like, bad foods are things like processed, like ice cream, candy, cookies, canned foods or crackers, things made like in a factory that have all of these additives to them that are bad for you. And then on the flip side, people said like fruits, vegetables, lean meat, stuff that's not processed is really good for you. So I feel like growing up as a kid, you have like all these happy thoughts of food. And then as an adult, it's like we have so much like guilt or shame for anything that we eat. And that's because we were like brought up thinking this way. And like there's diet culture and people out there that are always spouting out these things that are like, okay, you need to have like no fat in your diet, or like less fat, less sugar, like all of these things. And it's like, okay, who do I freaking believe? So even into my adult life, I struggle now with like reading the labels, and like if I have a bad food, feel guilty. And then if I eat a good food, I feel deprived sometimes. And it's like, okay, I can't have that. But then like too much of this is a bad thing. And it's like these memories about food relate even back to elementary school. Do you remember those square pizzas? Those were like my favorite. And then they had like the chocolate pudding and the little cups. And then I remember like you could buy zebra cakes. And I remember buying zebra cakes in the morning time and eating them as my breakfast, even though I ate breakfast at home. And it was like something that I had to hide. And I remember I was like, okay, I had the two zebra cakes and then I wanted some more. And so I convinced my friend to go buy a second pack for me. And I just remember like that taste and like how good it was. And then of course she's like, oh my gosh, like, how are you eating that much? It's so gross. But at the time, I was like, this is making me happy. Like, I like this. It tastes good. Like, I was excited for the day after eating that. And then, of course, like, her saying that was like, oh, now I kind of feel shameful and embarrassed that I ate that much. Well, like, this good and bad mentality comes from, like, our experiences growing up or being on TV. We get it from like social media where like people are like spouting off like, okay, this is bad for you. You should read this label, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yes, that makes sense. But at some point, we're going to have to stop and like make our own decisions. These, yes, could be bad for you nutritionally. Yes, these are really good for you nutritionally, but I feel like maybe it should all be about balance. Food, good for your body, but then you can eat food that's like feeds your soul. It's like every now and again, it's like you really need something to feed your soul. It's like, I feel like there's a catch-22, like no matter what I say, there's going to be somebody out there that's like, no, I don't agree with you. Like, this is stupid. Why are you saying this on the internet? The point of saying all of these things is the idea of this good and bad food has to come from you. Like, what's good for you and what does bad mean for you? All of these bad foods kind of feels like a rated R movie as a kid where it's like, you shouldn't watch this because it's rated R. And then too much fruit or something is like PG-13, where it's like on the cusp of being bad, but like not all the way bad. And then, of course, like lean meats and veggies, those kind of things are like rated G. So, like, eat as much as you want of that because it's not going to be bad for you. One of you shared with me, okay, this might be TMI to talk about. I'm going to mention it anyways, even though it's kind of gross. Okay, you can tell kind of like nutrient dense foods versus eating bad foods kind of by like what your poop is. Like, you can just tell, and you should do some research for yourself because I don't want to go like into it. And I'm not a scientist, I'm just sharing my thoughts with you, okay? These are just things like I feel like we need to talk about. In my mind, having McDonald's is like the worst thing that you could do. Well, maybe not the worst thing, but it's really bad for you. Because I remember being in college and I had this like psychology class and we were talking about nutrition. And we had this nutritionist come in and had this McDonald's hamburger from like in the 90s. And it looked exactly the same. Like the meat was the same. The bread was the same. There literally was not mold on the bread. That stuck with me. I'm like, okay, if that doesn't change, imagine like putting that in your body and how it makes you feel. Imagine just like, okay, I know that this is bad for me, but I just want it and I'm not going to have it all the time. It's just like this one thing. I don't feel like we should feel guilty indulging a little bit like here and there. It's like, so changing your mindset literally gives you freedom to like enjoy your life. I've stopped following like all of these social media nutritionists that are like, you should do this way and only this way is good. And maybe coming up with like a few rules would actually be helpful for you. Start enjoying life and start enjoying food just like as a kid enjoying that ice cream. The mentality of like, I'm just gonna have like a glass of wine to like wind down and relax. I feel like sometimes that can be good for you. Enjoy something without feeling good or bad. I feel like we should just let food be food and we make informed decisions, and sometimes we're nourishing our body and sometimes we're nourishing our soul, and that's okay, whatever that looks like for you and whatever you feel comfortable with. In my 40s, I feel like I'm getting a little bit more like life experiences and bringing those all together, and I really want to share that advice with you. So this is not meant to make you feel bad or anything like that. I just want to share that with you. Finding your tribe and people you can relate to and kind of learn from is something that I really enjoy and feel like I'm finding with you. So if you have more thoughts on this, I would love to read them and have you share them in the comments. And who knows, like maybe that'll help somebody else too.